So you have a late round pick in your upcoming fantasy football draft, somewhere between pick 9 and pick 12, and you want to know the best strategy so you can leave your draft feeling good about the team that you drafted and having a good chance to win the championship at the end of the year. The good news for you is I've done draft after draft after draft all off season long, and I've come up with the best strategy when picking from the later parts of the first round. So let's take some time today. We'll talk about some draft strategy, maybe some ADP pockets of players you should be looking at in certain ranges, and give you guys the best type of roster construction to build your team the right way in your draft. So without wasting any more time, let's hop right into today's video and let's start talking about some draft strategy. So first and foremost, drafting from the 9 to 12 spot is one of my least favorite places to draft this year. It's just a weird range. You get left out of that elite wide receiver tier of Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Tyreek Hill, CeeDee Lamb. You get left out of those guys, and most likely you're also going to be left out of the elite top 3 running backs, Chris McCaffrey, Breece Hall, and Bijan Robinson. So you're kind of picking at the beginning of a massive tier of players. So unfortunately, you're going to have to flag plant some of your guys, and you're going to have to get unique with the roster construction. So when you're picking in the later part of the round, I've found that the most unique strategy and the strategy that I come away with feeling the best about is a double hero running back strategy. So we'll talk a little bit about that. As far as the ADPs we're going to be using in today's video, we're going to be using 4-for-4 ADPs, and this should represent your ADPs in your home leagues very well because it's pulling ADP from ESPN, Yahoo, Sleeper, CBS, NFL, all of the platforms that you might have your draft on. It's pulling from all of those and putting them together, so it should represent everybody fairly well. Now, starting it off in round 1, you are going to want to grab that elite running back 1. Now, as I mentioned, you are going to be left out of that top tier of wide receivers. We mentioned the names, the CeeDee Lambs, Justin Jeffersons, Jamar Chases, all of those guys. You're missing out on them, and you're most likely missing out on the top 3 running backs. If you have the chance to draft one of these guys because somebody reaches in the first 8 picks, by all means, make sure you draft one of those players, but most likely you're going to be looking at a group of running backs where you're kind of going to have to pick between Jonathan Taylor, Jahmyr Gibbs, and if you really want to reach down, you feel confident about him, maybe a Saquon Barkley, a Kyren Williams, but most likely you should be looking at Jonathan Taylor or Jahmyr Gibbs. Some people are going to be nervous about the recent news of Jahmyr Gibbs hurting his hamstring. I'm not too worried about it right now. The reality is I'm still drafting Jahmyr Gibbs, especially where I can get a discount. So if you want to go Jonathan Taylor, go Jonathan Taylor. If you want to go Jahmyr Gibbs, go Jahmyr Gibbs. Just make sure that you're drafting one of these running backs. Now for your second round pick, as I mentioned, double hero running back, we're going to go right back to the running back well. There's a very strong tier here of Saquon Barkley, Kyren Williams, and Derrick Henry. Now Saquon and Kyren, they are my favorites of the tier because they also have pass catching ability where Derrick Henry doesn't necessarily have the pass catching chops. Probably not going to be used as a pass catcher in this offense, but if you have the chance to grab one of these guys, go ahead and grab them as well because you're going to be starting off your draft with a Taylor Barkley or a Gibbs Kyren type of mold. That is the goal. When you're in that first and second round, that turn there in the late half of the round, grab the double running back. That will set us up because now we can focus on the other positions where in your home leagues, those wide receivers are going to get pushed down the board. There's a lot of wide receivers that are still going to be very good throughout the next couple of rounds. That's where we're going to focus, but it gives us a strong foundation in our running back room here to start off the draft. Now moving on to round 3, as I mentioned, we're focusing on the wide receiver position. We're going to do this for the next 3 rounds, so buckle in, make sure you're ready. Wide receiver 1, you're going to have a tier here of Nico Collins, Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, Jalen Waddle, Cooper Kupp, Michael Pittman, DK Metcalf. Really, again, pick your flavor. I like to target the guys that are in high-scoring offenses. So at the time of this recording, you have guys like Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel on the San Francisco 49ers. There's rumors that Brandon Ayuk will not be there, probably here maybe by the end of the day even, so I feel like we've been saying that for weeks. The reality is target the high-scoring offenses. Nico Collins also fits this bill. Jalen Waddle, he fits this bill as well. If you want to target hog, maybe a guy like Michael Pittman Jr. or Cooper Kupp. These are the guys that you want, and you can come away in the 3rd round feeling comfortable with one of these guys as your wide receiver 1 too, especially because, yeah, you're not going to get one of the elite top tier guys in the 1st round, but you're still going to get a wide receiver 1 on your fantasy football team now in the 3rd round, and you're stronger at the running back position than your league mates. Now moving on to round 4, you're going to have the same idea. Coming around that turn, go right back at the wide receiver well. You have DK Metcalf, you have Devontae Smith, DJ Moore, and Stephon Diggs that are most likely going to be available for you to pick. I like DK, I like Devontae, I like DJ Moore. All of these guys can have a ton of fantasy football value, even Stephon Diggs. Now, some people are going to be a little bit more worried about Stephon. If you took Nico Collins in that 1st round, Maybe you don't want Stephon here because you don't want double Houston Texans, but make sure you grab one of these guys as well. I think if you can come away from this turn with a Deebo Samuel and a DK Metcalf, or a Nico Collins and a DJ Moore, you should feel very comfortable about what you have there in the wide receiver room. Now we have that long wait again coming back in round 5. As I mentioned, one more wide receiver just for good measure, making sure we feel comfortable with this room. I do want to look at a couple of these younger guys. You have Malik Neighbors, Tank Dell, Zay Flowers, T. Higgins, George Pickens. Now the reality is, if Brandon Ayuk is a Pittsburgh Steeler, probably not drafting George Pickens here anymore, but I think a guy like T. Higgins makes a lot of sense. He's been having a good camp. He's in a high-scoring offense with the Cincinnati Bengals, good quarterback play in Joe Burrow. You could go grab a guy like T. Higgins. Maybe you didn't grab Nico Collins earlier, and now you can get Tank Dell here. That makes a lot of sense. Or if you want to take the gamble on Malik Neighbors, a really good rookie wide receiver who should have a ton of volume, maybe Malik Neighbors is your choice as well. But make sure you grab one of these young guys, giving you 3 young, really good wide receivers on your fantasy football team. Now, round 6 is where I want to grab an elite quarterback. This round has kind of been the round that I've been doing this all year long, because you have the top tier of guys like Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson. I think those guys are great. The cost is too high. You're going to get very solid, very good fantasy football quarterbacks rounds later here in this specific pocket in round 6. I think there's guys like Joe Burrow that make a lot of sense, especially if you drafted T. Higgins. You get the stack. You could get a guy like Kyler Murray, who's one of my favorite picks in fantasy football this year. I have him as a top 5 quarterback. Maybe he's the guy that you want. You have some rushing upside and some passing upside there with Marvin Harrison Jr. now there in Arizona as well. You could even go with Dak Prescott or Jordan Love, 2 very high passing volume offenses with good quarterback play. They should have a lot of touchdowns this year. Those could be options as well. Now, really, it's up to you to decide who you want. Joe Burrow, Kyler Murray, they're my favorite picks in this round, but make sure you come away with an elite quarterback one. Now, round 7, we're going to look at the tight end position. Mostly this year, I've been suggesting that everybody go for a top 5 tight end. You get the Mark Andrews, the Dalton Kincaid, the Trey McBride tier. That's my favorite tier of fantasy football tight end this year, but because we were drafting in the later part of the round, it put us in a weird place where we had to go with the double running back early to get the most out of our pick selections. So because of that, we are going to be fading the tight end just a little bit. This tier of tight ends is the very last tier that I think has a high floor, is safe at the tight end position, and you have guys like Jake Ferguson and David Njoku. Now, you have some opportunities to get some more stacks here. Maybe if you went Dak Prescott on the quarterback round, you grab Jake Ferguson here and you get that Dallas Cowboys stack. Now, he is my favorite pick of the tight ends because he is probably the second best receiving option there in Dallas this year. There should be a lot of touchdown potential for him this year, but if you don't get him, go ahead and grab David Njoku. He had a very good end of year last year for the Cleveland Browns and could do it again this year with Deshaun Watson under center. Now, we're going to keep filling out the rest of this roster. Round 8, you want to look for a young wide receiver, and we're almost going to try and take our stab at picking the next breakout wide receiver for fantasy football. There's a lot of good young breakout candidates here. You have guys like Christian Watson for the Packers, Rome Odunze, Xavier Worthy, Ladd McConkey, Jordan Addison, Jackson Smith, and Jigba. These are some of the top guys that could potentially break out this year. I think if I was going to have to make a selection out of one of these guys, Christian Watson, Odunze, Worthy, and Jigba, those would be the guys that I look at. Ladd McConkey, I'm a little bit worried about the quarterback play there with Justin Herbert hurt currently. Same thing could be said for Jordan Addison with J.J. McCarthy out for a decent amount of time now, at least. We don't really know how much longer he's going to be out, but it's going to be Sam Darnold for a good chunk of the year. So I think if you take a shot on one of these guys, maybe a JSN in that Ryan Grubb offense, maybe a Christian Watson with Jordan Love if you selected him earlier. There's a whole bunch of options, but make sure you grab one of these young wide receivers. Now, because we went double hero running back, we haven't drafted another running back the entire way so far. Round 9 and round 10, we're going to grab 2 running backs for depth. There's a big chunk of running backs here in this tier. You have Tajay Spears, Javonte Williams, Devin Singletary, Nick Chubb, Gus Edwards, Ezekiel Elliott, Chase Brown, Trey Benson, Blake Corum. Make sure you grab 2 of these guys. What I'm wanting to do is I'm wanting to target ambiguous backfields, maybe where we don't know who the starter is going to be, or maybe the starter can change over time. Teams like the Titans, the Broncos, the Cowboys, the Bengals, the Chargers, these makes a lot of sense right now. Also, high upside handcuffs, maybe younger running backs, rookie running backs like Trey Benson, where if there was a James Conner injury, you could have a starting running back there in Arizona, or Blake Corum, where if Kyren Williams goes down, you have a starting running back there in Los Angeles, or maybe you drafted Kyren Williams in the second round and you just want to handcuff him with Blake Corum. That makes sense to me as well. So just make sure you grab grab 2 of these guys. I think if you can come away with any of Tajay, Javonte, or Devin Singletary with one of these picks, you're going to be more than well off at that running back position. So just make sure you grab 2 of these guys over the next 2 rounds. Now, round 11, I like to target the wide receiver position, and I say 11 or 12 because it's going to depend on the draft for you. Round 11, you're going to have the opportunity to draft guys like Curtis Samuel, Khalil Shakir, and Romeo Doubs, who I think are all in ambiguous wide receiver situations. Shakir or Samuel could compete for the wide receiver 1 job there in Buffalo, obviously with Keon Coleman as well, but there is some ambiguousness to that wide receiver room. Same thing with Romeo Doubs. Who knows what's going to happen there in Green Bay? Everybody is supposedly the wide receiver 1 in Green Bay. If you can get one of those guys in the 11th round, grab them. If those 3 are gone, take a running back in round 11, and round 12, look at one of the following wide receivers like Jerry Jeudy, Rashid Shaheed, or Joshua Palmer. Now, looking at round 12 and 13, because as I mentioned, round 11 or 12, you're going to look for the wide receiver. Round 12 and 13, we're going to look to grab 2 more running backs for depth. So you want to look at guys, kind of the same situation, ambiguous running back rooms, places where you could find some higher end handcuffs. I think when you're looking at this group of guys, you have J.K. Dobbins in Los Angeles, Tyler Algier, Marshawn Lloyd, Ty Chandler, Chuba Hubbard, Rico Dowdle, Jaleel McLaughlin, Antonio Gibson, Jalen Wright, and Kendre Miller. I think the guys in bold, Chuba, Rico, Jaleel, Antonio Gibson, and Jalen Wright, those are my favorite picks if you have to grab 2 of them. Chuba should start the year as the starter. Rico could compete for the starter in Dallas. Jaleel, I've talked about Jaleel as one of the best sleeper running backs in fantasy so far. Gibson, pass catching upside, and Jalen Wright, if there's an injury to somebody in the Miami backfield, you already know what the Miami running backs can do, and Jalen Wright showed us that he can do it in preseason as well. So make sure you grab 2 of these guys as well in between those 2 rounds. Now, if you're playing in a league that has defense and kickers, I wait until the final 2 picks to grab those 2 positions. I like to go with the defense before the kicker just because it's a little bit more important than the kicker. But the reality is, whoever I pick at that defensive and that kicker position, I'm probably not going to finish the year with them on my team. I do like to stream the position a little bit more because I wait on them, so you can do that. But if you are looking to draft the defense that you want, I say look at the early season schedule. Some of the teams with the best earliest season schedules are the 49ers, the Bengals, the Seahawks, the Jets, and the Browns. So there you have it. There is a draft strategy for picking between picks 9 and 12 in the first round in the later part of your fantasy football draft. If you did enjoy today's video, go ahead and hit that like button. Also, make sure you hit the subscribe button as well. We have a goal of 3,000 subscribers by week 1. We're hoping that we can hit that. We can only do that with your help. So if you're not subscribed, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. If you're picking in the early parts of the round, picks 1 through 4, we did a video on the channel as well. Or if you're picking in the middle parts, picks 5 through 8, we also did a video on that one as well. So wherever you're picking in your draft this year, we have a video for you. Go check that out. It's on the channel. And last but not least, go join the Discord. I do have a Discord free to join, linked in the description. There is no risk in joining it because, as I said, free to join. So just hop in there, talk some fantasy football with me in the community, ask me whatever questions you want. I got you covered. Now, I have nothing else for you today, so I will see you on our next video. But until then, peace out.